She sat there in the stands, pristine white shirt, sunglasses perched like a crown, whispering ugly things about my mom. I was just a kid with a scorebook in one hand and a blue slushie in the other. But that day, at that little league field in Cedarbrook, karma wore my face. If you've ever dreamed of watching someone get exactly what they deserve without lifting a finger, hit that like button and subscribe. Because today's story isn't about grown-up vengeance. It's about a 12-year-old kid, his mom, and one very messy lesson in instant karma. My name's Alex Grant. Back then, I was a shy 11-year-old living in Cedarbrook, a small town in upstate New York where summer meant two things: mosquitoes and Little League. The air always hung thick and humid, smelling of fresh-cut grass, hot dogs, and industrial-strength sunscreen. For me, life revolved around avoiding awkward eye contact, reading fantasy novels, and occasionally trying to keep up with my little brother, Ethan. Ethan was 7 and played t-ball. T-ball wasn't exactly high-stakes drama. It was mostly 5 innings of chaos punctuated by the enthusiastic squeaks of overworked volunteer parents. But even t-ball had a sense of officialdom, and that started with the scorebook. One Saturday, while my mom, Sarah, was chatting with another parent about carpool schedules, I was sitting bored in the stands behind the backstop. That's when I noticed something strange about the scorekeeper, a kind woman in a wide-brimmed hat, the way she scribbled notes and tallied runs. It wasn't just numbers. It was a system of tiny diamonds, lines, and circles. It looked like a secret code. I was mesmerized. In my fantasy books, secret codes led to treasure. Here, it led to the official truth of the game. The scorekeeper, whose name I later learned was Mrs. Peterson, noticed me watching. She had kind, crinkly eyes. She smiled, slid over the wooden folding table, and handed me the pencil. "It looks complicated, huh, kid?" she asked gently. "It's easy once you know the language. See this diamond? Fill in the corners for singles, doubles, triples, and home runs. You want to try?" For a few innings, I tracked every strike, foul, and run like it was life or death. My focus was absolute. I wasn't watching players anymore. I was watching the game as a narrative of statistics, written down in neat pencil strokes. It was the most important job I'd ever had. At the end of the game, she took a look at my work. "Perfect," she declared, sliding me a crisp $5 bill. "You have a knack for this, Alex. Can you do the next 2 games? They're only 30 minutes each." She offered me $14, a shocking, exhilarating amount of money for a single afternoon. For middle schoolers saving for a new set of Dungeons and Dragons dice that felt like winning the lottery. She said she had a commitment and would grab the scorebook for me the next day. The next day came, but Mrs. Peterson didn't show. There was a frantic volunteer trying to find someone who knew how to score the game. Game still had to be scored, so I stepped up. The scorebook was already in my backpack. I did the 2 scheduled t-ball games and 2 older league games that afternoon, finishing my meticulous work just as the sun began to dip behind the pines. That night, I felt guilty about having the scorebook. I couldn't just leave it at the field. I wandered over to our neighbor's porch, Mr. Fulton, head of Parks and Recreation, and an intimidating figure known for his meticulous lawn. I told him what happened, the whole story of Mrs. Peterson, and tried to hand him the scorebook. "Mr." Fulton didn't take it. He peered at my neat, almost architectural diamond patterns. He didn't look impressed. He looked thoughtful. "Mrs. Peterson moved out of state yesterday," he said, adjusting his glasses. "You scored for games today, Alex?" "Yes, sir." He paused. "Keep the book, and keep the job. I'm hiring you unofficially. $7 a game, 4 to 6 games a week. Don't tell anyone what I'm paying you. It's an unofficial volunteer stipend." For an 11-year-old, I was thrilled. $7 a game. This wasn't just pocket money. This was my first real job. I was an official scorekeeper for the Cedarbrook Little League. My chest puffed out a little every time I sat down at that folding table. Life settled into a satisfying rhythm. After school, I'd pedal my bike over the fields, set up my table, score the games, and pedal home with a few extra bucks and a feeling of purpose. My mom was happy. She saw it as a good lesson in responsibility, and she liked that it got me off the couch. But at one of Ethan's games a few weeks later, I learned a hard truth. Adults can be nastier than kids. It was late in July. The air was heavy. The stands were packed, and I was behind home plate. Scorebook open, ready to go. My younger brother, Ethan, stepped up to bat. He was tiny with huge glasses, but he had a surprisingly good eye. Like any proud big brother, I paused my scribbling, cupped my hands, and cheered. "Come on, Ethan. You got this, buddy." 2 rows back, behind a row of exhausted fathers, sat a woman and her friend. This was Carol. She was wearing a perfectly styled platinum bob and a pair of sunglasses that must have cost more than my bicycle. She also happened to be the mother of the opposing team's star player. Carol leaned into her friend and, with a voice like sandpaper dragging across wood, hissed loud enough for 4 rows around her to hear. Conflict of interest. Betty's cheating to make his brother's team win. My ears burned. The blood rushed to my face. The pencil point snapped. I hunched over my scorebook, scribbling random lines and trying to disappear into the table. The accusation was ridiculous. It was T-ball, but it felt like a spotlight had been shown on my small, important job, and found it fraudulent. I was paralyzed. I wanted to turn around, to stammer out a defense, to show her the official badge Mr. Fulton had given me. But shyness was a powerful anchor, and it held me in place. My mom, Sarah, was sitting just behind Carol. Mom had been quiet until then, watching the game with that soft, patient look she always had. But she heard everything. She didn't announce who she was. She didn't stand up or yell. She just leaned forward and calmly, quietly said, "He's a kid doing a job. I doubt cheating has even crossed his mind. There's nothing wrong with him cheering for his brother." It was a perfect, low-key defense. Direct, reasonable, and it put the burden of proof squarely back on Carol. Carol stiffened. She turned her perfectly styled head, looked Mom up and down. The simple cotton t-shirt, the slightly worn denim shorts, the practical ponytail. She turned back to her friend and, under her breath, called my mom something unkind. I heard it. I clenched the pencil so tight, it left a groove in my palm. I knew exactly what Carol meant, and the sting of that insult, directed at the person who was my whole world, was worse than any playground punch. I didn't say a word to Mom then. I just kept scoring, my focus gone, my diamond sloppy and dark. The pencil trembled in my hand. Days went by. I kept scoring games. Mom continued to be Mom, making my lunches and helping Ethan with his shoelaces. But that moment stuck. It had lodged itself in my chest like a sliver of glass. You know that it's you get when someone insults your family? When they try to minimize the person you love most. I was just a kid, but the injustice sat heavy. It wasn't the cheating accusation that bothered me. It was a pure, casual contempt Carol had for my mom. I would replay the scene in my head. What should I have done? Should I have shouted, "I work for Mr. Fulton"? As a shy kid, confrontation was a foreign country. I simply couldn't do it. But the anger was a little furnace inside me, constantly burning. It taught me that revenge doesn't just belong to villains in movies. It belongs to anyone who sees a wrong and feels the desperate need to even the score. I didn't develop a plot. I didn't spend hours formulating a plan. I just carried that small, heavy package of righteous anger around, waiting for some unknown future opportunity to lighten the load. It was a Saturday again. Late afternoon game. It was so hot that the asphalt in the parking lot looked wavy. I just finished scoring a game and rewarded myself with my favorite summer treat. A bright blue slushie, the kind that stains your tongue and your fingers for hours. I was heading up the bleachers, balancing my loot. The scorebook was awkwardly tucked under one arm, the pencil behind my ear, and the oversized slushie cup was in my hand. And there she was, Carol, same bleacher seat, same air of entitled superiority. But today, she was wearing the whitest white blouse I'd ever seen. A linen masterpiece that practically glowed in the sun. It was a perfect canvas for disaster. A deep, quiet calculation, the kind you make without conscious thought, settled over me. The universe, in its own mysterious way, had presented the opportunity. I smiled, not a devious villain smile, Just a polite, slightly sheepish, "Excuse me" smile, the kind of clumsy kid uses when navigating a crowd. I climbed right up behind her and sat down on the plank above her. I made a show of balancing everything. The cup, the book, my pencil. I shifted the scorebook, then adjusted the pencil. I leaned forward to get comfortable, my hand hovering near the slushie. And then my grip slipped. It was a beautiful, slow-motion disaster. The entire icy blue concoction cascaded down the back of her spotless white shirt. It didn't just drip. It flowed, instantly soaking the crisp linen, creating a vibrant, spreading Rorschach of blue dye across her shoulder blades. It was like watching a slow-motion commercial for instant karma, set to the silent scream of a perfect blouse being ruined. She shrieked, a sound high-pitched enough to make the t-ball players stop running. She jumped up, scattering her purse and a magazine, blue slushy dripping everywhere, staining the wooden bleacher planks. I gasped theatrically, making sure my eyes were wide with what looked like genuine shock. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," I blurted, my voice tight with stage panic. "I'll grab something to dry it. But the game's starting and I have to keep score. Mr. Fulton said I can't be late." I used the scorebook, my badge of officialdom, as my shield. It was a perfect, irrefutable excuse. She stared at me, jaw working, a vein throbbing faintly near her temple. The blue stain was spreading and cooling against her skin. She grabbed her bag, snatched her sunglasses off her head, and stormed off the bleachers, moving with the jerky, furious gait of a truly defeated person. And just like that, Carol never came back to the games. That night at home, the guilt finally hit me. It was a dull, fizzy feeling mixed with overwhelming relief. I was in my room when Mom came in to fold laundry. I put down my comic book and blurted out the whole confession. What Carol had said about her days ago, and what happened today with the slushie. I waited, braced for the lecture I knew I deserved. Mom listened silently, folding a towel with surgical precision. When I finished, she gave me the kind of look only moms can give. Stern eyebrows, but eyes twinkling. "Alex, that was wrong," she said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Don't ever do something like that again. Hurting someone's property, even accidentally, is not how we treat people." I nodded, feeling my initial guilt deepen. She finished folding the towel, put on the stack, and then she smiled. It wasn't a huge grin. It was a small, knowing, beautiful smile that only reached her eyes. She stepped forward and hugged me tight. I felt a little guilty, but mostly lighter, like the knot of resentment I'd been carrying for days had finally loosened. It wasn't the kind of hug you give a good boy. It was the kind you give someone who has fiercely protected you, even if they use a questionable method. That image of the bright blue slushie streaking down Carol's perfect white blouse still makes me grin. It wasn't premeditated like an adult revenge plot. It was a kid's clumsy but poetic justice. And maybe the best part wasn't even the spill. It was seeing my mom's face when I told her, stern but proud, like she knew some small balance had been restored in the universe. She didn't condone the act, but she understood the motive. She understood that a 12-year-old's rage is purer than an adult's, and sometimes it needs a release. Looking back now, years later, I realize that day taught me two things. 1, don't mess with someone's mom. 2, petty revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes it's just a silly, messy accident that evens the scales and makes a story you'll never forget. It was an 11-year-old small, sweet victory against adult nastiness. If this story gave you chills or at least a guilty smile, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the funniest and most satisfying little karma moment you've ever witnessed? And of course, subscribe for more real-life stories where karma and revenge meet in the most unexpected ways.